All right, so today I've got Shawn Hollis, president of Waynes. How you doing, Shawn?
Hey, I'm doing great, Rusty. Glad to be with you guys.
Man, appreciate you being here. I've got to know you, Shawn, over the last probably year or year and a half or so. I think we had lunch here a while back and got connected. And actually, I was a Waynes customer when I was living in Birmingham. We've been in Auburn for about 11, 12 years.
Okay.
Spent about a decade in Birmingham, and I was a customer of Waynes. And I believe I had termite with Cooks back in the day. I didn't know what those little green, little green caps were in the yard. But so I've always been a big admirer of Waynes and what you guys have done. So welcome, man. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, appreciate you, and thank you for your business a few years ago. So.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's set the stage here. Most of our listeners are familiar with Waynes if they're in the industry. You know, you guys have had tremendous growth over the last several years. I know you're one of our companies we emulate to be, and we like to learn from you guys and others in the industry that are doing it right, like you guys are. If you don't mind, sort of set the stage of where Waynes is today from a company structure, size, and all that good stuff to give our listeners some context.
Yeah. So I'd love to do that. And I love sharing the history of Waynes Pest Control. It's something I do in every interview that I get to conduct, which are very few, it seems like anymore. But next year we'll be a 50-year-old company.
Wow.
So we were actually started by a guy named Wayne. Mr. Wayne Lagle started the business in Birmingham 50 years ago. And he was driving a school bus in the morning, doing pest control during the day, and driving a school bus in the afternoon. So the American dream, right? Wayne built a phenomenal pest control business here in Birmingham, here in the River Chase kind of Hoover area, and sold that business now about 20 years ago to a gentleman named Stephen Spline. So Stephen bought the business from Mr. Wayne, and he and his partner Eric Fry grew that business across the state of Alabama, if you will. So up and down I-65. Over a period of that 18 to 20 years, and grew a really nice, strong pest control business that offered termite protection, pest control, and lawn care. We had landscaping at the time for a period of time. We did home repairs. We were kind of into a little bit of everything. But in 2019, we were acquired by Anticimex, which is a Swedish-based company, and most folks know who Anticimex is now. You know, with the merger that got completed, I think last week with Rentokil and Terminix, by default, we're number 3 now, right, in the world. So we were number 4, and when 2 buys 3, we jump up, right? So we're number 3 size pest control company in the world from revenue standpoint. And so it's great to be partnered with a company like Anticimex and have those resources and have those opportunities. I was on a call at 7 a.m. this morning with a guy who was 2 o'clock in his afternoon, his time, and we're talking about gross margin around pest control and what he sees and what I'm seeing. And, you know, so it's different in Italy than it is in Alabama, but come on, it's pest control. And so we can talk about those things and understand, you know, where we're headed. Look, Anticimex is their desire is to grow their footprint in America. They've been here since 2016. We just announced the acquisition of our latest platform. So there's a dozen platforms across America, up and down the East Coast,
wow,
up and down the West Coast, kind of the middle. The bread basket's a little empty right now. And so we've grown across the United States through the acquisition of those platforms. And then the job of the platforms, of which Waynes is one of those, is to roll up, if you will, the fragmented business that is pest control inside of our geography. So Waynes' geography is Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and the Panhandle. And so across our 3-year journey now with Anticimex since July 2019, we've acquired 9 businesses. And so that's meant a huge revenue growth for us, right? But organically, we've maintained double-digit 10 to 11% organic growth across that time frame too. So that leads us to your original question, was kind of where you sit today. From the time Eric and Stephen sold the business, we were 27-ish million to I just presented my 2023 plan last Thursday to the board at an $80 million company.
wow.
And so phenomenal growth, right? 30-ish% a quarter. And you know, if you think trying to figure out how to grow a company is hard, come ask me. I can tell you. Scaling at that rate has been fun, but it's been extremely challenging. And so, so there's been a great deal of opportunity for our folks, our team members to grow, and their careers get to grow inside of that growth and that opportunity. And then some of the acquired team members that have come on have moved into leadership roles for us. And so that's for me the most exciting thing that's going on for us over the past 3 or 4 years. So.
And that's awesome. And like I said, we had, here at Pruitt Pest Control, I know we get inspired by what you guys have done. And you look at what Stephen and Eric did and how they've grown it and the different iterations of the business. And what I've really been impressed with is how you guys have maintained your culture, and you guys have a super strong culture. I mean, I realized that from day one when I was looking into getting into this industry and I'm researching, hey, what are the sort of the gold standard of companies out there? Wayne's kept popping up and the culture, and I would meet, I know you guys do a lot with builders, and I would talk with builders and they would talk about the leadership and, just the networking within the company. And so it's been really impressive. We're going to spend some time talking about that, because that is a really important, I think, part of any business and scaling is that culture piece. But let's talk about your background. We talked about this prior to this interview about how there's no clear direct path probably to become president of Waynes, right? I mean, you look at probably how your path has zigzagged over the years and see where you are now. Tell us about your background and how you got to the president position that you are now.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It was some twists and turns. So look, I was an aspiring high school senior, and my goal was to be a president of a pest control company one day. That's a lie.
Yeah,
right? You've never met anybody that's been kind of their deal, right? Nor that they decided, hey, I'm going to jump into the bug business. Maybe a few, as they're kind of taking it over from their dad or whatever. But rarely do you find those of us that are involved in this awesome business that even understood what it was, how great it was, or the opportunities that were involved when we were going through either high school, college, or even early part of our career. Look, Rusty, I played golf in high school. I loved playing golf as a young man, and kind of started my college journey in one direction, but found myself getting a degree in agronomy. And working in the golf business for 22 years. I was a golf course superintendent. So I was not the pro, but the guy who grows the grass. And I ended up actually built a few golf courses across Georgia and here into Alabama, and was doing that in Athens, Alabama, like I said, about a dozen years ago, where I had built a golf course and had stayed there and was maintaining that golf course. But across that 20-year journey, I went from the USGA saying we need a golf course a day to open to meet the demand, to when I got out of the golf business, more golf courses closed that year than open. And so I'd seen mentors in that business of mine that weren't able to retire. I obviously saw what the expectations around the golfers was happening and what my budget was doing. So those are going in diverging directions. And so I kind of got alone one night and started praying. And I said, Lord, I need a job where I make about what I make, because I was breadwinner. My daughter was about to go into junior high, so you know how that is. I didn't want to move and jerk a junior high daughter out of the school. And Lord, my limitations. I can grow grass and lead men. That's about all I got. So let's go see what we can find. And I met Eric and Stephen through Alan Ritter, who was running the Huntsville operations at the time. And I remember it was a series of interviews that I went through with Stephen and Eric, and so, but we kind of landed where I was kind of like, man, what's going on here? It was 5 interviews and they're going to offer me a job or what? So finally I hit Stephen and I said, man, what are you looking for? And he said, I need a guy that can grow grass and lead men. And I said, I'm your guy. And it's because lawn care was kind of driving them crazy, especially in the Huntsville market. It's a harder service to manage, to lead, to sell and grow. And so I came in and look, lawn care is completely different than golf course business. And I figured that out pretty quickly, but I also learned the pest control business. So I had a great time there growing our Huntsville market, leading that effort. I did that for probably probably 8 years. And then we started kind of trying to figure out how to take this business and scale it while it was still Stevens. And so I stepped into a role. Reminder, we had landscaping. So I stepped into a role where I was leading the grass business, is what we called it, lack of a better term, in the northern half. So I was Nashville and Huntsville. I was leading landscape and lawn care. And then I had Trey was my counterpart. He was leading the bug business in both. So he lived in Nashville, I lived in Athens, and we kind of traded that out. Shortly before the acquisition, I jumped into a role where I was leading all of our lawn care business. So up and down I-65 and throughout Alabama and Tennessee, leading just the lawn care. And that's because no acquirer really wanted the landscape business, never get into that business. It's not as great as pest control. And so Stephen was making the moves to try to understand how to position that. After the acquisition, I moved into a role of the vice president of operations for our northern half. So Huntsville, Nashville, Knoxville, that was my Bermuda Triangle that I traveled around all the time. And Eric, stayed in a role as president of Waynes for about 18 months. And then I was fortunate enough about almost 2 years ago to step into that role and take over for him. That was the plan for Stephen and Eric from day one that I knew. Obviously, we had to get Anti-CMEX to get on board with that and help understand it. But it goes back to your idea of this culture that we have at Waynes, that those two guys built, that we built together, that we all felt was important for us to maintain. And we felt like it was important for somebody from the inside to help us make sure we maintain that.
Sure. And tell us about, how is that? I would assume there was some, I don't know if fear is the word, or concerns, of being acquired by a large company like that. And, like I mentioned earlier, it seems like you guys have maintained your culture and your identity within that. And obviously you've kept the Waynes name and you're a platform for the geography you're in. But what tell us about the concerns maybe that you had and how you guys transitioned through that? Because I can imagine that's got to be a sort of a shell shock for a lot of people. I mean, you still had a $29 million company. You guys still had a lot of team members out there, right?
Yeah. So even back then we had, a couple hundred folks around, almost 200 folks around. And so man, it can be shock and awe. That's what I even call day one now as we acquire some of these other companies that we've acquired since that point. But, for us, look, Stephen and Eric could have sold to really anybody, Rollins, Rent-A-Kill, Terminix back then. Anybody would have been a willing acquirer. Even some of the other private equity firms that were just getting into this space. But I think that the decentralized model that Anti-CMEX has, whereby we are the platform that gets to, like you said, maintain our brand, continue to run our operations the way we run our operations. So there's no directive around, you have to sell pest control this way for this price, and you have to do termite this way, or you have to train this way, or drive this truck, or there's really nothing there, Rusty. So there's very limited support services staff in the United States from Anti-CMEX, and they truly are that. They're support services. Obviously, there's a finance arm that, from a reporting up standpoint, we've got shareholders we report to, but from an HR standpoint, they're there to support us, help us, and we've got our own HR leader here. So we maintain all of our payroll, and everything happens through Waynes. I believe that was the best of option that Eric and Stephen could have found. And so there was a lot of angst and a lot of, wow, nobody could believe Stephen and Eric were leaving. I mean, I've told Stephen this, I thought he and I would retire and ride off in the sunset together. We're about the same age. And so it was a shock. But now looking back 3 years in the rear view, it's the biggest non-event in Waynes history. Meaning, if the average guy doing pest control for Waynes that was doing it in June of 2019 or October this year, his life hasn't changed at all, except for he's got more vacation days. He's now got a better 401k plan. Right. He's got a better insurance plan, so it's actually better. And so it's been a really good, smooth transition for us. And I've learned a great deal. All of us have learned a great deal, being in a different side of the pest control business. So.
Let me ask you, we had a guest on a few days ago that the episode will be coming out shortly, but we were talking about scaling a business, and this person was outside of the industry, and as what are some things that you've learned, or where do you try to learn how to scale a business, right? So coming from your background of where you've kind of worked up the ranks, and you look at the growth again over the last few years, but then based on where you guys are going, where do you get that knowledge base to organizationally structure that kind of growth? I mean, I'm sure with every layer of growth, there's new sets of challenges or positions that open up or new roles? I mean, where do you gain that knowledge to kind of know how to navigate that?
That's an excellent question. And when you find that resource, point them to me. I've yet to find somebody that's written the book on 30% growth a quarter and how to scale within that. Look, it's trial and error to some degree. So for us, because Stephen's a CPA, he owned the business. One of his college roommates was our CFO. There was a lot of trust there. So the finance function is what's really grown the largest piece for us. And it's because we are in more of a reporting up structure. And so we've got shareholders we're responsible to, right? And so we have to make sure that we're reporting things in an accurate, timely, and with clarity. And so that side of our business is different. It's grown the most from a percent of revenue standpoint. Operationally, we've had to grow, obviously, but we'd started preparing for that at Waynes. We'd kind of created a level. So if you think about, we use the term service center leader. Most folks call it branch manager. And then most folks call it a service manager. We call it a supervisor. That's the next level. We created field captain level below that. And we did that with some intentionality about 6 or 8 years ago, so that we could not only create a ladder for guys and girls to climb, but for us to build our bench strength. And so what that allowed us to do is, it's the old adage of do the job before you get the job. And so we created a 3-year process where those men and women are doing inventory, they're doing scheduling, they're doing some of the things that supervisors are doing, and then they're moving, but they're doing a half a day worth of work. But by the time they've kind of worked their way through a 2 to 3 year process, then when the opportunity opens, they've got a spot and we've got a person. We're doing that now with the leadership team, with the service center leaders. And so some of that's what you experienced with us the other day. Is just, we called it SHERPA training, but it's the idea of leadership and trying to teach. That's not intuitive, really. You have to understand that you have to be intentional about leadership, not only from an operational standpoint, but one of our buzzwords is people matter. They really do. That's what we call our HR department, is people matter team. And so if people matter, then the most important part about leadership is investing in people. And so that's what we mostly train around.
Wow, you hit the nail on the head there. And you mentioned SHERPA.
Yeah.
So we've got it. This is a perfect segue to talk about SHERPA. So I was actually invited by Shawn and his leadership team to attend their SHERPA training. And I'll get you to explain that here in a second. Down in beautiful Orange Beach, Alabama. The weather, by the way, was amazing. And unfortunately, I had a quick little day trip and had to get back for some homecoming duties I had, but so I didn't get to enjoy the weather. But man, I tell you, that was a really awesome leadership retreat, if you will, if that's what you want to call it, for your guys. And I appreciate you having me there as a guest. And it was totally inspiring. And to see going around the room and people clapping and getting fired up, and there's a level of cheesiness and there's a level of all that stuff, but everybody loves it, and we're the same way here at our company, and people buy into it. It's like my wife said, Rusty, family day, nobody wants to go to a company picnic. I'm like, well, hopefully we're creating a culture where our team members want to go to the lake, or they want to go to the beach for a team family outing. And that was a good example with your leadership team. Tell us about that retreat and how that came about in 88-48. That was a big part of that. Just tell us about this.
Yeah, so it's funny that I don't know that a year ago or a little year and a half ago, when we decided on creating Project Everest, which is 88-48, and I'll explain that we really envisioned all of this. We really envisioned the SHERPA training, or the how do we build that through our leadership training? How do we do that and talk about it company wide? Look, it honestly started as almost a Fight Club initiative. So if you've seen the movie Fight Club, and so at Anticimex too, all of us platforms are brothers. But who we kidding? Brothers are competitive, right? And so it was our goal to be the #1 platform in Anticimex. And so how do we do that? What does that look like around some 2025 goals? And so as we were working on a lot of moving parts of our business and how do we incorporate some of the smart rodent control things that we have going on through Anticimex into our business, how do we talk about 2023? This was our 2022 kind of planning retreat. And there was a group of us as a leadership team that got together, and one of our guys, actually our marketing guy, Chad Hall, kind of realized that our goal for 2025, we had 48 months to get there, and we were 88 million from that goal. And so we started talking about that, and it rhymed, and it was cool. And then Chad's kind of a Netflix junkie, and so he had been on this kick of watching this Everest movies, and all the documentaries and stuff. And he realized that Everest is 8,848 meters high. And we're like, that's ordained. So we're going to do Project Everest. And we created this whole idea around climbing Mount Everest is through these different stages or these camps. And it worked for the years that we had between us and 2025 to hit these revenue goals, which they're just goals. I mean, that money's the money, it is what it is. For us, we see that as families that we get to impact through our team members, through our customers. And so, but you have to have goals. You have to, in a business, you have to be striving for opportunity. And so we created that. And then we started thinking about the idea of servant leadership around that. And look, you can't climb Mount Everest. If you've ever kind of researched that, and I went down too many rabbit trails with Mount Everest on this, but Sherpas are the guys, the indigenous people that lead the expeditions. They're the guys that, before the guys that get there that pay $100,000 a year to climb Everest, the Sherpas are there the month prior. They're the guys that put the ropes in place and stow the oxygen in the spots where you need it, put the ladders across the crevasses so that you can cross that. And all the while they're serving that climber group. They're the first guy up. They're the first guy leading. They're kind of getting their team on board, making sure they're checking the health of their folks, understand, what that looks like, and really truly being a servant leader. And so, man, we started realizing that our supervisors and service center leaders really need to fulfill that role for our folks. And if we're going to be successful in this, it won't be because Shawn Hollis has done anything. It'll be because this larger team has supported all 438 of us currently, and we're pushing towards that goal. And so that what you experienced was, if I'm honest, like a first kind of draft of that. We plan on doing that annually, and it turned out awesome. And obviously we've got some very inspirational guys on our team that did a great job of speaking through and speaking to our team members. But yeah, so if you've been to Academy, we kind of copied a little bit of the things they do. That's a little cheesy, where they divide up into color teams and the Oreo challenge and all the things that we did, But we had a great time with that and really enjoyed that. And moreover, that team loved it. They felt re-energized. It's kind of that post-COVID first face-to-face back, all of us together, 60 of us in that room. Mm-hmm. And it was phenomenal. I tell you, we had a debrief afterwards, try to understand, always you got to do this. How do you get better? And obviously there were some places that we could, but man, the overarching comment was that went really, really way better than we thought it could or would. So we had a great time with it.
Well, and when companies, especially with unknown economic times, right? Companies are looking to cut expenses, and that's not an inexpensive thing to bring in that many people, not even just the cost of hosting the event in the hotel rooms and whatnot, but maybe loss of productivity out in the field or out in the offices. But it's an investment, and you could feel the energy. And if you can just raise the energy level by 10% with that leadership team, and they can take it back to their team, and they absorb 5% of that, what kind of lift you get across the board, with the company and the culture, man. It was really awesome. I just pulled out my notes. Of course, you encouraged everybody in the room to take notes before we got started, and I did. I was a good rule follower. And I know there was there were several takeaways I had, but one of the ones I had, which I thought was really cool, was the hero, right? So I believe it's your service center leaders. You guys consider them heroes, correct? Talk about that acronym and what that means, because that was a really cool takeaway.
Yeah. So that kind of came up kind of late in our planning, if I'm honest, and kind of trying to understand how do we take our shield, so integrity, courage, perseverance, and character, and we take our definitions around those 4 words and how we believe that protects our business, And how do we take that and mold that with Antecemex's idea of the branch manager as the hero? We would call that service center leader is the hero. And what they mean by that is the local leader. And the one closest to the customer gets to make the decisions. It's back to that decentralized model idea, which I believe is phenomenal. And so we decided that we needed to take the word hero and divide that, into those 4 words and tie that to our shield. So how does integrity and humility play together? What does that look like, right? And so what could that look like? How could courage and how could that work with encouragement? How could that all tie together, right? And as we worked through those words and we tried to decide, how could we teach this? I think Alan did a phenomenal job of taking, 4, really ended up being 5 different lessons around these different ideas. And back to the idea, Rusty, that leadership is about being self-aware enough that you understand that your job is to pour into your team. I don't care if that's 1 or 2 people, if you're a dad, if that's your family, if you're a mom, if that's your kids or your classroom that you lead, if you lead something at church, if you lead something in your civic organization, if you're a leader in your business, your role is to support that team that you lead. And so if you think about it, it's the idea that you do that through humility, and if you can't get past that word, if you can't get yourself past that idea, then if I'm honest, you'll struggle in leadership. Doesn't matter any one of those roles I mentioned, you'll struggle in that. You have to get yourself out of the way to understand that your role is to position those team members to be first.
For sure. So that's the H. What about the E?
Yeah. So our next word for us is courage, right? And so how can we encourage through that? How can we take that and courage for us is around communication, is hearing what needs to be heard, saying what needs to be said. And so how can we take that idea and how can we pour into our team members and help them understand that that's a big part of being a professional is having the courage to have open and honest conversation, whether that be with your customer, internal or external, whether that be with your family members, whether that be with a random stranger. I think we've lost in America. I don't think it's taught very well, by and large, in the family unit or the classroom, whatever you want to talk about. I don't think this idea of accountability and courage is taught very well. And so I think that we have the unique opportunity as business leaders to kind of reteach that to 20 and 30 somethings, if you will, and help them understand that's a big part of the growing up phase, right? And so yeah, that's a hard lesson. That's a hard lesson that not everybody can and will learn, but we believe it's key part of where we're headed and what we're doing. So absolutely.
All right, we got to hit on R real quick. So we're going through the hero.
So
perseverance. Tell us about the R.
Yeah, so perseverance is it's just resolve there and make sure that you've got the stick-to-itiveness to get it done. For us, if you see our business card, I do a poor job of holding it up and try to get it on the camera, but it's got a little green corner on one side. And so, for us, that I'm gonna mess it up. So for us though, that for us in the lawn care world, that's that back corner of a lawn. You've stretched 300 foot of hose out and it won't quite reach that back corner, right? So your option is to not do anything, and nobody will know, especially if you're doing pre-merge. Well, nobody will know for 3 or 4 months that you didn't spray that back corner. The other option is to roll that 300 foot of hose back up, move the truck, unroll that 300 foot of hose, hit that spot, and roll that 300 foot of hose back up. And reminder, it's 98 and 90+% humidity. It could be that back corner of the crawl space that you have to go over another air duct, under another plumbing fixture to get your flashlight on the back corner of that crawl space and do a world-class inspection for your customer. It could be that spot where, look, if folks are like my wife, they got stuff under the sink like crazy, but you need to move some stuff to get maybe a roach trap back there in the back or get some roach bait back there. And so you just got to persevere through that. And you got to have the resolve to do that. You got to understand that's part of, as a leader, as a Sherpa, that you can't give up. You've got to persevere. You've got to keep fighting for yourself, but moreover for your team. They can't see you give up. They can't see you back down. They can't see you not give your all, or they'll follow suit. They're going to do what they're going to mimic their guy, their leader, their girl. And look, that falls on me and you too, Rusty. That starts here. And look, there's days you don't feel like doing that. There's days I don't feel like doing that. We don't have that option, right? We don't have that option as a leader of a business to not be given 100%, to not be on point, to not be ready and willing, engaged with meetings, to not be, in tune with what's going on in our business. And so even our service center leaders and our supervisors, they don't have that option either. And they have to understand that.
Absolutely.
And then the O for us is look, character is our last word. And our goal is through integrity, courage, perseverance, we want to develop and create men and women of character. Stephen's adage on that was, hey, I want to be sitting on my front porch when I'm old in a rocking chair and somebody walk up and say something good about Waynes. That means he's done a good job. I think that's a good barometer, right? I think that's a good, and so for us, outstanding results. And look, that can be on this scale of this growth, this $150 million company goal. But man, I think it's a bigger goal around personal growth and around, because we've said this, pest control is simply a vehicle that allows us to serve people. That's our teammates and our customers. And if we utilize that vehicle wisely, there'll be people that don't stay here for their full career, but they'll go be awesome people somewhere else because they learned a little bit here. And if we did that, that's success in our minds.
Absolutely. We talk about that all the time and trying to develop everybody to reach their potential, right? And so everybody's potential looks different. Every role in the company looks different. And at the end of the day, that's what we encourage. We want you to maximize your potential in the role or the seat that you're in. You may not always be in that seat. You may move to a different seat, but while you're in that seat, maximize what your potential is. And
that's it.
Like I said, everybody's got different levels of potential, and to what is it? To much is to those with much given, much is expected, right? And so
Absolutely.
we tell that.
Absolutely.
I've had that conversation with some really good people, and not just this company, but others over the last 10 or 15 years. If you are producing at this level, but you have the opportunity to do a lot more, it's not about the level's not good enough. It's you have so much more potential, and it's important for your peers and those around you to see you're maximizing your potential. And
absolutely,
if there's not a desire to maximize that potential, then hey, is it the wrong seat, or is it a different opportunity? Like you said, maybe on down the road, even with a different company or different industry. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yep, absolutely. There's obviously several good books around that. Energy Bus is one of those where, finding the right seat. One I read a month or so ago was Impact Player. And I would mess up the lady's name if I tried to quote it, but golly, that's a really awesome book that gets you to help try to figure out how you move yourself or your team from contributor. So, guy does a pretty good job, to impact player. Who's going to have an impact? Who's the Tim Tebow on your team, right? And how can that person have an impact across the whole team from his one seat on the bus? It was an awesome book.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, let me shift gears a little bit, talk about sort of the future of not just pest control, but maybe even the home services industry. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience here, and I bring this up a lot with our guests, and I'm kind of intrigued with, where consumer behavior is going, how people are purchasing products, services, just references with our last podcast, talking about, tend to talk about Amazon or direct to consumer marketing that's happening, where consumers can purchase directly, from the company. And it just seems like there's been so much disruption in technology that is making it a lot easier for consumers to get information, to purchase, to those kind of things. What are some things you're seeing maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe coming to our industry, that maybe we should put on our radar, or maybe get ahead of, to make sure we're prepared as pest control company owners?
Yeah, so I think we can talk about across several spectrums, but let's talk about just service delivery to begin with, and let's think about, so we've got Maria on with us, and so she's going to be a major consumer for us in 10 years. Her age group will be a major consumer for us in 10 years. And so there's no technology aversion for her age group. And they're actually will be seeking out that person who's on the leading edge, almost a cutting edge, if you will, of providing that. And so how do you do that with less chemical, applications? How do you do that in a green manner? How do you do that and provide still that pest-free environment? But how do you do that around having a more conscious mindset around our environment and for our potential future customers? So I do believe monitoring is going to become something that we all have to get our heads around, whether that's through digital monitoring like we have with CMEX and Smart, or some other opportunities that may be out there with some other vendors that are really kind of working hard to understand that. I think if you were in Boston, you can tell that's where we're headed. That's where the industry's headed. So I think that we can either take the stance of, hey, we've never done it that way, or the way we do it works, or whatever. And look, at the end of the day, you'll probably be okay, but you're not building your business to the degree that you can. You're not doing whatever your exit strategy is. If you're going to give it to your son, if you're going to maximize your exit through selling it to an acquirer, you're not doing yourself. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not trying to stay at least up to date with where the industry is headed there. So I believe we're headed there from a service delivery standpoint. So reduction in chemical applications or the types of chemicals that we're using, and maybe some more digital offerings. If I think about how we market our services, and you touched on that, we've got a buy it now button. And so I thought that was kind of cool. Well, let's develop that. Let's add it to our website. And we get 3 or 4 sales a week off that thing. And we give the customer, they schedule it right there. So it's the whole, if you're doing it today and you can pick tomorrow morning in that 4-hour window. So it's a 4-hour window, which our technicians will call them and narrow it down. But we've set up a way that operations can live with, that we give them a way to sell it and buy it. And there's a whole group of folks that don't want to talk to anybody. And it's weird for me and you, because we're not that person, but there are folks that don't want to necessarily have to even over the phone interact. And so we're giving them a way to do that. I think the key thing, if the folks listening today aren't selling their business and detaching the invoice from the service, they need to do that tomorrow. And what I mean is, if you're selling quarterly pest control for $90, you need to be auto debiting somebody's card for $30 a month. And here's why. Your retention goes way up. It's the gym membership idea. It's hard to quit. It's whatever. As an acquirer, that's very appealing to me, because a big part of what I'm buying is your book of business, your goodwill, and that's more sticky for me that way. But it gives us, as the experts in the industry, the freedom to design that service around what's best for the customer, to fully take advantage of these new chemical technology that we get in place, or routing and scheduling opportunities that we have, where Miss Jones is not saying, because you did this, I got to pay you that. But it's just year-round pest control that they auto debits their card. They never think about it. And we manage that for them inside of that year. And so pest-free environment is what everybody's looking for. And we can provide that. It's just, how do we go market it and talk about it?
And you talk about the convenient factor too. And yes, you're obviously right on subscription-based models, right? And that's what, we're very fortunate that we started 2.5 years ago, that we kind of create this thing like in today's maybe world or environment compared to, if we started this company 10 years ago, right? And so for me, the obvious reasons, like you said, for monthly billing, right? So the credit card on file, the retention's better. We're not having to chase down collections, but also as a consumer, and maybe this is just me being lazy, but when I get a paper invoice and I then have to call and make a payment or write a check, I don't even know where my checkbook is.
I couldn't tell you where mine is.
I mean, that to me is so inconvenient. And I know that's a small thing. That's a small inconvenience. There are bigger problems in the world. But you look at the time in our attention span as humans, or it's just dwindling. It seems like with with these right here, these iPhones, right?
That's it. That's it.
You're getting pulled in so many different directions. In my opinion, it's just so much easier for a consumer to set it up on that auto draft. Now, look, 10 years ago, you'll probably agree, again, us being a little bit older than Maria here on the podcast with us, you're hesitant to give, your credit card or something because, you're going to get debited your card or something without your authorization, or there's an unforeseen charge. But now I think we're so conditioned, as a society to get used to that. So that's something I know we incorporated, the monthly billing. And again, it's about year-round protection.
That's it.
And not just the result of the service that we went out and did.
That's it. That's it.
Something else interesting, I know in the insurance industry, we've seen a lot of, there's been a lot of disruption in the insurance industry, I would say over the last 20 years, but we've seen even the use of drones replacing traditional inspections, right? So for example, a storm comes through, a hurricane, tornado, instead of sending a physical inspector out to take a ladder, climb the roof, look at all the damage, now drones are being used, and you see how it's eliminated a lot of inefficiencies.
Yeah, no doubt.
And you mentioned that with the technology, and it sounds like the stuff you mentioned that, maybe we saw a hint of in Pest World in Boston, it's probably more preventative kind of thing and maybe more proactive monitoring. Yep. Is that kind of what you're alluding to as far as?
Yeah. So the way for us, the digital pest control that we're using now is right now around rodent protection primarily. And so we've got their peer sensors, their eyes, that work kind of like the light switches in my office. If I don't keep moving, the lights would go off in here, right? But they're picking up movement. And so they're tied to a device that looks a lot like an irrigation controller in the garage. And so they're tied to us and through our software. And so we're more proactive around alerting Miss Jones. That's our mythical pest control customer, alerting Miss Jones that, hey, we need to come out and see what's going on in your attic, because we've had a hit now 2 days in a row at this same time, or whatever. And we can set the parameters around when the eyes look and put them in garages, wherever you would put sticky traps or rodent stations. That's where these go.
Right.
And so you're being proactive about protecting, and there's a certain portion of our customer base that really see the value in that, or they've got a brand new home and they want to protect it and they want to understand what's going on, or they've just got a rodent aversion, so it's not for everybody, obviously, but it's an important part of what we're doing. And I do believe that as that grows, I think probably bed bug technology, and I don't know from CMEX, but across the industry, bed bug technology is almost there, it seems like to me. Termite could be next, and there's some pest offerings that some folks are working on. Like I said, there's enough happening that the tools are getting sharpened, that's going to become what you do as a PCO as we reach the next decade. So.
Well, one of the attractive things for me coming into this industry was, where can technology disrupt? Where can it enhance?
Yep.
And I don't see technology, at least in the foreseeable future, replacing us, right?
Exactly.
Our service professionals that are going out on a daily basis. Now, they may be equipped with more technology in hand or more resources to better serve the customer. But I think that's one of the more attractive things with this industry. In the home services industry, it is still a relationship business, and it's still knocking on someone's door, having the trust to go inside the home and take care of them, right?
Yeah. So you're right. The technology is in the chemical world. So these micro encapsulated products that we have that do a better job by sticking around longer for the customer. But us as the expert, that doesn't go away. So that little bag of stuff you buy on Amazon and spray around, you don't get the expertise that we offer. And I think that's truly the benefit. I mean, who we kidding? Y'all know, everybody knows you could go to the co-op and buy most of the stuff we do and do what we do,
right.
But you got to know what we do. You got to know when to do what we do. You got to know, how much is the right amount, how much is not enough, how much is too much. And so it's and be the expert to know where to place the products that we use. So I think that as long as we keep positioning that as the value add from our side, you're right. We'll never replace the smiling faces at the front door.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this, with us being an example of a company that's newer, I think we've got a broad audience here on this podcast. There's 3 of them, so that each of them have no. We have a good solid core 3 listeners. Me, Maria, let's see. But we do get feedback from listeners, people that are starting. We got a message the other day like, hey, I just started our company 6 months ago. I'm learning so much, thank you for sharing. What is some advice you would give to someone who's just now starting maybe their pest control company, a way to maybe set up the structure of their company, or maybe just general advice you would give to someone that's either small or trying to take it to that next level, knowing what you know now in today's world?
Yeah. And look, I don't have the experience of being that guy. So I'm envious of guys that I meet that did create the American dream, meaning they started their own business. They built it to a nice sized business that now I'm acquiring and making them a multimillionaire as a result of that. And I love those stories. Those are kind of my favorite part of my job. That said, I did come into a business that at the time I think we're probably bi-monthly still when I got here. And so we moved to quarterly pest control.
Mm-hmm.
Rusty, we've recently moved to triannual pest control. We did that through some learnings that we took on from some of the other platforms that we knew, even in Florida and Carolina, that were already on that model. And we tracked their reservice, percentages. We tracked their chemical use percentages. We tracked their, what's that look like? But back to this idea of the detachment from the bill and taking advantage of better chemicals and better products that we have and being the expert in that field. And Miss Jones just wants pest-free service. She doesn't care how often you come. So Think about that idea. Think about some advantages, or, it costs you a little more from a chemical percentage of your revenue to do that. But I'm telling you, the most expensive thing you spend money on every day is your labor or your guy's labor.
Yeah.
And anything you can do to mitigate that is going to make your business better. And so if you're bi-monthly now, go to quarterly. If you're quarterly now, start looking at triannual and think about what that could look like for your business. I would make sure that if I was in the Southeastern United States where we are, that, I see sometimes where guys are a little worried about termite protection and liability around that. Look, there's some awesome products out there in the bait world, still even in the liquid world. But make sure you well round yourself and make sure that you don't get scared of termite liability. You don't get scared of the issues that could arise, because that is a very profitable business, right? And it's another thing that, as an acquirer, as somebody that's looking at your business, or if you've got an exit strategy, that needs to be a strong mix of your business. And so when I run up against one that's 70-30, pest to termite, I have to ask, well, what's your driver? And every time it's been, we're just worried about this or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, go make sure you include that in what you're doing, and then find a really good CRM that has a route optimization and can do that scheduling for you. Do away with the note cards, laying them out on a table, trying to make your month every month. Do away with that. Let the technology inside these very good CRMs that we have available to us today, and go create an awesome route and build density for you, because that's another way that you'll make your business better. Anything you do above the gross margin line to make your business better, because the rent's the rent, the utilities are utilities. You want your salary to be the same. You want to pay sales guys, but all that stuff in directs above the gross margin line that you can affect makes your business better.
Yeah. And I would assume you guys, along with some of the other acquirers out there, there are probably companies and pest control owners you come across that are not maybe quite ready to sell yet, but there's some opportunity for them to implement some of these things. Mm-hmm. You have the ideal business that obviously increases the value for them. It creates value for you as an acquirer, because it's going to be easier, maybe integration within your model. So you touched on pests, you touched on termite. What about on the lawn side? Of course, we have mosquito, we have rodent, but we look at on the lawn side, and I know Waynes has been in that world a long time. That's where you got your start. Where do you see value in that, or do you see that as, and it may just depend, but what's sort of your perspective on that?
Yeah, so I think it varies by the market on whether it's expected that your home service provider includes that as part of the offering, right? And so you get to Florida, you get to the peninsula, and it's like, you just gotta, if you want to have a pest company, you've got to have lawn care, or vice versa, right? And so that becomes part of the expectations. I would say that, even here in Birmingham and Nashville and some of the places that we're working in now, that's also starting to be true, because there's a lot of folks kind of, when I came to Wayne's a dozen years ago or more, that was one of the unique things. I thought, man, that's cool. I haven't really seen that. And now it's way more commonplace than it had been. Here's what I'll tell you. And here's the way I explain it all the time. So you just have to know this. You have to understand this. And it's not rocket surgery, but I think it's worth us talking about. Let's say you're going to charge $400 a year for pest control, and you got a guy driving a Tacoma, and he's going to spend 3 or 4% on chemical, right? Okay. He's going to make 50 grand a year. In lawn care, he's driving a $60,000 Ford pickup truck. He's spending 14% on chemical, and he's going to make about 50 grand a year.
Mm-hmm.
So you understand what your gross margin is. And so you just have to understand, you have to be smart about that. It can dilute your termite profitability. It can dilute your pest control profitability, but you have to understand what your customer base is after and what they're wanting. So in Knoxville, we didn't find that to be the case. Chattanooga, we haven't found that to be the case where people expect it. We haven't added lawn care in those, just because the other thing you always need, I call it the guy, it could be the girl, but somebody like Shawn Hollis that knew how to grow grass and lead men. The grow grass side was where Stephen was struggling back in the day, because it's harder. It's the vanity service. It's the first one they'll quit. It's the first one to get you cussed, My example is if an ant crawls across the kitchen floor, you're going to grab a paper towel and squish it and throw it in the garbage, but you're not calling your pest guy and cuss him, right? But if you got one piece of nutsedge, and for those that don't know, nutsedge doesn't come from a seed. I need you to call me when that perennial weed comes up so I can come kill it for you. If you got one piece of nutsedge by the mailbox, by Friday, when that thing's about a foot tall and waving at you, you'll call and cut and kill everything. And so you just have to know that. You have to be able to understand that and know that that liability is real. So lawn care is it's a gamble, but it's worthwhile investment when your client base understands the value.
That's so funny, because for years I did my own my Scott's treatment in my yard, and I got on I did the annual plan, and then used to cut my own grass at some point, and I enjoy cutting my own grass. I mean, I'm OCD about it, the edging, the blowing, but I found it was taking 3 hours to do it. And I'm like, where can I get three? Like, I don't have 3 hours anymore, right? Unless I don't want to go to any of my kids, sports or whatever. And I remember the first time I started doing the fertilization and the weed control with the company, and looking back, this probably just made him, cringe. I said, hey, my goal is for this to look like Augusta.
Yeah, for $500 a year, I want Augusta National. That's what I want.
But you're right. I mean, that was my expectation. And he probably just, he's like, we need to fire this guy before we even bring him on board or charge him double. But that is so true. And I did have someone, kind of mentored me in the beginning of starting our company, and they were just, they were just starting to offer lawn, and they've been in business for years. And I said, well, should we offer, pest and lawn? He's like, well, so Rusty, I don't know many startups, that have offered both successfully right out of the gate. And, here we are 2.5 years in, we have not offered it, but I think it is kind of interesting. I think that's good advice and good perspective, looking at the markets that you're serving. And again, what is the consumer, what are they asking for? What is their expectations?
And look, when you can build it around your existing base, right? When you can increase that density and sell lawn care to your neighborhoods, if you will, I mean, it's still an 18 to 20% business. So who wouldn't? We're $8.5 million worth of lawn care. Who wouldn't take that, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to understand it's not 25%. It's not 28% like termite could be, right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I guess we'll kind of wrap up with that. I know you're a busy man. I certainly appreciate your time this morning. I appreciate you mentoring me, reaching out to me, and whether it's the lunches we've had or the time I spent with you in Orange Beach, and hopefully I'll get another invite for that in future years, and can plan a few more days around it. But I appreciate what you do for the industry, for the state of Alabama, for the Southeast. I look forward to, networking with you in the future. And any other last thoughts you want to share with everybody, maybe before we hop off?
No, I tell you what, I've enjoyed hanging out with you. I mean, I knew from that first lunch we had that we would be friends, and and we could learn a lot from each other. And I appreciate that interaction. And that's, at the end of the day, like I was talking to you earlier, that's, we had some builder partners at that retreat. We had some other guys that former PCOs at that retreat. We believe as the tide rises, all the ships kind of come up. And so it's worth all of us investing in each other, because there's enough customers out there for all of us, I promise. And competition's fun and it's healthy, but we can all learn and be a better industry as we invest in each other. So I appreciate you doing this podcast, is an example of that, Rusty. So I appreciate you doing that.
Hey, appreciate it again. And I'm sure we'll talk soon. Thanks for all you do, Shawn.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
All righty.
Bye.